We've got a huge game coming up this Saturday between the Packers and the Niners. One of the hottest teams in the league right now, with the Packers taking on the number one seed in San Francisco. I'm really hoping for a great matchup, but let's dive into my keys for the matchup. I'm not going to cover every single possible matchup. I will cover what I think is important after watching a bunch of the games in the coaches' film. And I also have to say, before we dive in, that a lot of my coaches' film was corrupted. So 90% of it is gone after about 3 to 4 hours of finding the perfect plays to use to match my notes. Unfortunately, it's lost. So let's dive in. I've used a lot of highlights instead, and let's get to point number one. All right, well, let's start out with a fun one. I'd recommend that everyone grab some sort of drink before the game starts and then take a drink or shot every time there isn't a motion or shift. Both of these teams love to use shifts and motions with a bunch of different purposes behind them. Information motions to identify man or zone coverage, deceptive motions to force alignment shifts and attack the opposite side, and of course, momentum and leverage shifts to take advantage of a wide receiver or running back getting full speed before the snap. It's going to be an incredible chess match of play design, and I'm looking forward to it. And part of that play design ties in with the personnel. And there's going to be a lot of different personnel groupings on both offenses to try to get into favorable situations. And I wouldn't be shocked if the 49ers are in 12 or 21 personnel for most of the game. And they try to open the game out by going straight into empty formations, because by going in 12 or 21 personnel, they're going to try to get Green Bay into base defense. And then if you spread out those linebackers in coverage, which is a weak point of Green Bay, that's just going to get abused. So it's going to be constant mind games between these two teams just from a substitution standpoint. If I were Joe Barry, I would try to rely a little bit more heavily on the 4-3 type front that he's been bringing out in the last few weeks. So having 3 D-line personnel and then having either LVN, Rashawn Gary, or Preston Smith on the edge as a down defensive end, and Carl Brooks on the other side with Kenny Clark and Slayton on the interior. I think, Slayton will give up a little bit in the pass game, but they'll remain stout on the interior in case there is a 21 personnel that lines up in the I formation. The other option would be to use a 33 Cub formation where you would have 3 down linemen and you would have 2 edge rushers and then 1 middle linebacker. And essentially that's going to get you into a similar nickel situation, but you're going to have the option to bring either edge rusher in addition to the 3 down linemen, and potentially to drop Kenny Clark in coverage, which for some reason Barry's been doing it the last couple of weeks, probably trying to catch someone off guard, which might actually work against San Francisco because they love their checkdowns over the center to McCaffrey. Not that Kenny Clark is really going to stop McCaffrey in coverage. And of course, on the opposite side, we've got Matt LaFleur going to do the exact same thing. I think he'll continue to rely heavily on 12 personnel like he did last week. Obviously, that's more for the run game, but the other thing I think LaFleur does or might do in this game is have a lot more 11 personnel, because I think he wants to get San Francisco into more nickel, because if there's any spot on the defense that can be exposed, it's the nickel corners. And, San Francisco is very good defensively. They don't blitz a lot. They do play a mix of man and zone, but by spreading the field, you're going to give your young guys, the receivers, an opportunity to get open and hopefully limit that pass rush, which is only going to be bringing 4 guys each time. And in the run game, I think LaFleur is going to keep using those split zones because, from watching film, Chase Young gets very aggressive on those split zones and he crashes down very frequently. And on those kick-out blocks, he has a tendency to spill inside. So if you keep hammering those split zones, sifting, kicking out, I think you can get a big play on the edge. So I would look for a Jaden Reed reverse or some sort of motion reverse after they've been hammering a split zone for the majority of the game, because if there's any guy that's going to be giving up a big play on the edge, it's going to be Chase Young. Next, let's head into the trenches. If I had to pick an O-line for this game, I think Green Bay has the clear advantage, especially with the way they've been playing over this last stretch. The 49ers O-line has really only one big standout, and that's Trent Williams. If we consider looking at the losses of the 49ers this year, It's because Trent Williams hasn't really played all the snaps. The last time that the 49ers lost a game where Trent Williams played 90+% of the snaps was back in week 6 against Cleveland. He sprained his ankle in that game. He only missed 2 snaps. He came back in, and they ended up losing that game on a field goal that was missed, that was potentially game-winning by Jake Moody. And in the following 2 games, Trent Williams didn't play. 49ers lost both of those games. So this just shows you how important Trent Williams is to this offense. And even more if I show the next-gen charts of Christian McCaffrey. The majority of the 49ers offense runs to Trent's side. Of course, there are some runs to the right, but the majority, heavy majority, is to the left. So continuing on this 49ers offensive line, they've really struggled on the interior. This is going to be a big game for Kenny Clark on the interior. Also a big game for Rashawn Gary on this right tackle, who's played better recently, but has been quite inconsistent throughout the year. And on the Packers side of the offensive line, Rasheed Walker has continued to improve throughout the year, and Zach Tom has been a constant, allowing no sacks to Parsons and TJ Watt, who are 2 premier pass rushes, so I don't think that Bosa and Young are going to scare him one bit. Of course, the Packers are going to have their hands full with Bosa and Young off the edges, but recently the Packers running backs have been fantastic in pass blocking situations. I think the key matchup for the Packers is going to be Jenkins against Hargrave. Hargrave has been playing very, very well. Jenkins has been up and down. He's been playing better as of late. So I think if there's any single matchup to watch on the Packers offensive line, it's going to be that left guard spot. And for the Packers to attack the 49ers offensive line, I would expect a ton of blitzes, a ton of twists, a ton of stunts on the interior to try to get quick pressures in the face of Purdy. And the 49ers, they rely heavily on a 4-man rush. They occasionally bring blitzers, but it's not something that is really a part of their identity. I'm inclined to believe that the 49ers will probably break that tendency a little bit. I don't think they're going to stick in their season-long tendencies, and I think they might try to pressure Love early and often just to try to rattle him at the beginning of the game. Now, looking at the defensive side of the ball for both teams, I expect to see a ton of zone coverage. Again, both of these offenses, they use a ton of motions and shifts. It's very difficult to play man, although the 49ers do a very good job of kind of adjusting to those motions and pushing coverages to fit the new alignments. And they switch coverages at the last second very frequently. And I've seen a lot on film that they rely heavily on cover 1 with a hole defender. On third downs especially, they go to man. And the hole defender is obviously going to be Warner or Greenlaw, dropping back into a zone and man everywhere else. And Ward, their number 1 corner, typically follows the number 1 receiver, but I don't know who he'd be following in this Packers offense. Anyone can be the target, so I don't think that they have Ward shadow any particular receiver. Also, both teams have been incredibly aggressive on checkdowns as well. Both Purdy and Love do a great job of recognizing the coverages and getting the ball out quick if they know there isn't anything there. If teams want to survive in this game, they need to be able to aggressively come up and tackle that checkdown. Love, he's relied a little bit more on tight ends in the flat, whereas Purdy usually finds McCaffrey over the center. I know I've already talked a little bit about the approaches when I was talking about the offensive line in terms of blitzes and stunts, but I think this game is going to have a heavy reliance on physicality for both teams. It is playoff football now. And when the 49ers struggled last year against Philly, obviously Brock Purdy got hurt, but it had a lot to do with the tone that they set at the beginning of the game. There was a lot of chippiness, there was a lot of physicality, and whoever is going to come out with a fire and a ton of physicality in this game is going to have the greatest advantage. This traditionally hasn't been a strength of the Packers, but recently they've been playing with great intensity, and they really need to step up this week to challenge that kind of idea that the Packers are quite soft, and I'm really looking forward to this dogfight. Now moving over to special teams, just very quickly, both teams have rookie kickers. The Packers probably have suffered a little bit more from Carlson than the 49ers have. Of course, the 49ers have had a game-winning kick opportunity where Moody has missed it, but I think the Packers fans have struggled a little bit more with the number of extra points that are missed by Carlson. And both of these teams, they rank in the bottom 10 in special teams, and I've noticed a little bit on the coverage of San Francisco that there are some holes because some of their lanes get collapsed when they close in on the kick returner, and that allows for bounce out opportunities. So it could be a point that Nixon will want to exploit as a kick returner, and I expect him to take out more kick returns than he has been lately, rather than just kneeling it. And the last thing that I want to address are the outside factors. Of course, players on the field are going to be the ones that determine the outcome, but we can't ignore several outside factors. We've got weather and injuries that are always important, and the 49ers have played in tough, close games when it's raining, and obviously the forecast could change between now and then, but it's looking very likely that it is going to be raining on Saturday, and the elements are the ultimate equalizer. Both teams have to play mistake-free football, so this could be a sloppy game with multiple turnovers on both sides just because of the weather. And the other factor that I want to look at is the Niners haven't really played a meaningful game in about 2 months. They've not played with all their starters in about 3 weeks, and while the extra rest to get healthy is great, there could be some rust. The Niners are incredibly talented. There's nothing against them at all. On film, it jumps out at you. They are deserving of this number 1 seed. They are deserving of the top 2 rankings that they're getting from PFF on both offense and defense. They are incredible, but momentum is a factor as well. Green Bay, they've basically been fighting for their life since week 15. So they've been playing playoff games for the last 5-6 weeks, and they have nothing to lose. They went into Dallas last week. They had great intensity. They had a great game plan. And right now, they're one of the hottest teams. And this is the right time to get hot. Now, on the injury front, it looks like the Niners are going to be missing Cleveland Farrell, who he's been a decent rotational player for them since Chase Young got on the team. He's been pretty solid based on the film that I saw. So missing him is going to be somewhat important for them, especially if there is an injury. And then Dre Greenlaw, also questionable. I would expect him to go. It is a playoff, so a lot of these questionable players will end up going. And then on the Packers side, of course, half their roster is on the injury report. Enigbare is out for the year, so you're going to have LVN step up. A.J. Dillon hasn't practiced. That isn't too much of a big deal because the Packers seemed comfortable with Wilson last week. And then, of course, we've got the status of Jair being up in the air after aggravating his ankle last week. But I would expect him to suit up as well. It is playoff football. I don't think that they would sit him in the biggest game of the year, especially against a talented team like this. Then again, I'm not in the trainer's room. I can't see how bad his ankle is. So it's really up to the Packers on whether or not he's going to play. I would imagine Jair pushes the coaches to be able to play. Listen, there's so much to look for in this game, and I can't really get into every piece of detail without making this, the length of a Hollywood movie. So I'm not going to bore you with everything. These were just kind of the key things that I wanted you to look for. I think if we compare the Packers to the 49ers, the Packers may only have an advantage at 1 or 2 position groups, which you should expect from a game that is featuring the 1 seed and the 7 seed. Although I can't really believe that Vegas decided this is going to be a 10-point spread or a 9.5-point spread in some places. The Packers have been over touchdown point underdogs the last 2 weeks. Yes, they have a young roster. Yes, there are a lot of areas that they are outmatched in, but this offense is unstoppable at the moment and has been playing well enough to keep them in the game, even if the defense doesn't show up. So I'm also going to try to use some reverse psychology here. Just like last week, I picked the Cowboys to win by 4. This week, I think it is not going to be that 10-point spread. The Niners are going to win, though, in my opinion, based on watching the film. It's every game that I looked at, it just jumps out that this is going to be one of the best teams in the league. And they are so consistent. They are very good. So barring an injury to a key player, I think the 49ers come out on top. Like, it's such a good team, and not taking anything away from the Packers' performance on offense lately and their performance on defense, but the 49ers are just very, very good. And I would not be surprised to see them in the Super Bowl this year, but I would like to see the Packers win, of course. So my scoreline, I think, is going to be roughly a 31-26 game. I really have no clue. I mean, if it's rainy and sloppy, it could be a lot lower scoring. Although, if everyone is executing and playing at their best on offense, it could be another shootout. And, you know, I really just hope that this game is very entertaining and that the best team wins. So let me know what you guys think. Tell me what your prediction is, your scores in the comments below. And then also, if you'd like me to do a live stream after the game, I haven't done it yet. I haven't done a live stream on YouTube yet. So I would like to chat with everyone after the game, win or loss for the Packers. Just everyone might need a place to decompress. So let me know if you think that might be a good idea. But I will see you in my reaction video afterwards. And of course, go Pack Go. Hopefully they win, but it's going to be a tough game. So take care, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.